First things first, none of these Archon Shards matter at all. Because I'm not running corrosive, so they don't matter. What does matter, on the other hand, for this build, is the Arcane Pistolier. Because you have far too little ammo in the magazine to deal with any large crowd of any kind. That is not necessary. I have it because I like it, and there's other stuff I use on the build that it boosts. So you can switch that out with whatever you like. In fact, you could probably use a secondary arcane to boost damage. Or fire rate. Which, honestly, if you're not going to use the exact build that I'm about to show you here, right after the pet, Arcane Velocity might actually be best in slot for you. This is the pet, and it's nothing special, it's just a viral primer. You know, nothing crazy. Nothing super spectacular. You know, I mean, I have the Vigilante set, but that's only for primary, so I'm just showing that so that way you are aware. Now let's look at the actual build. There are a couple of things that we will have to talk about here, and I'll just show you these right quick so that way you can look at it, and you can pause it. This for gas, specifically, and then this for blast, specifically. Now, the reason that we have two different builds is because of the functionality of gas and blast. And that's going to be really important here, because I'm about to explain it. So I guess we'll start with, well, I guess since we're on it, we'll start with blast first, right? And just right quick again, if you missed it, so that way you don't have to run back. That is the gas build. You can screenshot it. And this is the blast build. So you can screenshot it. Now, as you can see, I am running Pistol Acuity, and that is because it makes this a lot easier. It really does, surprisingly so. The reason that I have this set up different and why I have semi-pistol cannonade is because the fire rate is not great. The other reason that I have Pistol Elementalist is because the reload speed is also not great. In addition to blocking the fire rate from going higher or, in Creeping Bullseye's case, lower, I also get punch through, which is very helpful, and 300% bonus damage. The main reason why I have this is because of the way that blast works. You see, with gas, you're gonna want as many procs as possible, right? Because the more procs you have, the more dot. The more dot, the faster you kill the enemies, especially in an area, which is very important. Now this, with the lower status chance, and higher base damage, and just like, you know, lower ramp up, is important. Regardless of whether you're at 10 stacks of blast, or 9, when they die, they will detonate. As long as they have at least one, they will detonate and cause an explosion around them. And 57% without multi-shot is good enough. So that is why I have this specifically, and with this, you're not going to be able to boost any fire rate at all. But you're not really going to need it, and it helps because too much fire rate on this weapon, even with steady hands, is a problem. Because then you're going to be reloading more than you're shooting. So it's a really nice balance. The other thing, before we go over to gas, that I want to say, is that multi-shot is incredibly useful for status. Because with a 57% status chance, that's not so bad, right? Normally. But that's also with a lot of multi-shot. The more bullets you have going toward a target means you have that many more rolls to potentially proc a status effect. With this, it literally is just 50-50. But your chances of proccing any of these status effects are drastically improved by having multi-shot. So, without having galvanized chamber, or whatever it is for secondaries, I'm not only losing out on a bunch of extra damage, but I'm also losing out on the ability to proc statuses more efficiently. Because this is a pretty tight build. Keep that in mind. That is also why I chose to do this. Because it doesn't need that many blast procs in order to be effective. So as long as I can get to around this point, obviously more is better for status, then it'll work. And I can have crowd pops, like I was having in the showcase. The reason that I didn't go with the galvanized multi-shot mod is because I'm doing more damage by having pistol acuity than I would just by switching out the galvanized mods, or the galvanized multi-shot. And that's really important, because not only are we getting crit chance, so that way we can dip deeper into the crit tiers, but we're also getting 350% weak point damage. It actually makes up for the loss of multi-shot. The one thing that it truly, truly does affect, like I said, is being able to proc status consistently. That is the main weakness. And it did hurt. It took me a while to figure out a good setup for this. Because I did want to add crit. Because, I mean, it has a nice, high crit multiplier at base, and I wanted to take advantage of that. So I'm trying to balance a bit of comfort with usability and steel path viability. And that's why I went with this build specifically, because more status chance would be great, but the way that Blast is, you don't need a bunch of procs to be able to benefit from it. And that's what's really important. We're also losing lots of status chance from just not having multi-shot, as well as damage. That's why we have semi-pistol cannonade, to help with the ramp up, and you know, it's another thing in there, blah blah blah. Now for the gas build, it is a little bit different. So instead of having the creeping bullseye, I have primed pistol gambit in here. And the only reason that I have this is for the bonus status chance. This is not for the direct damage, because it hits scan, so it's only going to be additive and not multiplicative like it would be on a projectile weapon. And if you're unsure of what a projectile weapon is considered versus a hit scan, basically the easiest way to differentiate between them is that a projectile weapon will have time to target. So you'll have to lead your shot. You know, you can shoot, wait a second, then it hits. Hit scan is mostly anything in this game that has just regular old-fashioned bullets. And as soon as you pull the trigger, it hits its mark. That's its scan. So I have it for the status chance. And I decided to go with this instead because, hey, a little bit of extra damage, why not? Couldn't hurt. So that's why I have it. Then the rest of the build is essentially the same, except for gas. And the reason why I have this, like I was half explaining for the blast, is the more gas procs the better. And you would think that it wouldn't actually hit that hard, being that it only has 396 damage for its base as opposed to its 1500 for the blast. It hits mighty fine and mighty hard, believe you me. As you saw, it does not lack at all. Again, the Pistol Elementalist is more for the reload speed, but because we are not using any kind of corrosive, this also is incredibly helpful for the dot, the damage over time, the ticks of gas and blast. It does make them more lethal, and that is also something that we need. One of the things you can do for both of these builds is that you can, it's not going to proc as often, the status effects, because of the lack of multi-shot, you can go ahead and either get rid of galvanized crosshairs for the magnetic might, so that way you can deal with Eximus easier, or on this build, you can get rid of galvanized shot. However, there is something very important that you need to realize about this weapon. With that speed, it's great, right? But if you boost your fire rate, or you just do a different build, look what happens. The same distance, but faster. You see that? But without moving, look at this. That's me doing that on purpose. So keep that in mind. You're not going to be able to just hold down the trigger and hope for the best if you're at a distance with a higher fire rate. That's kind of like the highest fire rate you can go to just by using your finger without having horrible accuracy. And that's a little bit faster than its base fire rate, but you're gonna have to do that. Like, look at this. Nearly pinpoint. That's great. Well, this is gonna be just not even hitting your target. I mean, you can see that from here. Yeah. So just be aware of that. Your fire rate will affect your accuracy. It's annoying. I hate that games have that, because as long as you're able to control the recoil, the bullet should go wherever they're going to go. This is honestly just an annoying quote-unquote feature. Be aware of that, because that will affect your ability to kill things. As you saw with the Acolyte and the gas build, I was just holding down the trigger on him. That's why I was getting sporadic, inconsistent damage on him. So be very aware of that. The other thing too is that whenever you are swarmed with a lot, and I mean a lot, of enemies, you will run into the problem of having a hard time trying to actually get a headshot because they're all in your face. Now that we have what seems to be 2 to potentially 3 times the enemy density, which I love it, but for weapons like this, it can become a nightmare very quick unless you can make distance from your target. The other thing is, because of the way that they changed the Ancients, it seems like it's even harder now to headshot them. I don't know if their actual head is smaller or their hitbox just is, but it's a real pain in the ass. Also, this is not the best build in the world. This is just something that gives this weapon more utility, more fun, and it's a bit different, so do keep that in mind. In addition to that, there are plenty of single-target weapons in this game that you can very comfortably make into crowd clearers, or at least room poppers, or group poppers, at worst. And they just feel great. They do. But with how low the magazine size is on this thing, the way the reload is, the way that it handles and shoots, this is not the most optimal build, and it probably fits the role of being a panic weapon. Or it's much faster to switch to your secondary than to reload your primary weapon. And if you have, like, one of those meta builds that just dumps single target damage and can just bitch slap anybody, and you don't really have to worry about stacks too much, even though they're beneficial, that honestly feels like what this gun is. It feels like an oh shit weapon that you pull out because you just ran out of ammo, you don't have time to reload, you can't escape whatever enemy, you just pull it out and pa, 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 pa. Take him out right there. That's really what it feels like this weapon is designed for. Or, of course, flanking some people at a distance. Definitely not for crowds, and despite me building this for an AOE build, whenever you get that enemy density built up, it does not feel good. It is still fun to be able to take them out, but just keep that in mind. It feels like you're trying to use a screwdriver where a wrench belongs. Like I said, very fun gun. It's very cool. I don't know. I'm either gonna run the blast build, or I'm probably gonna run corrosive heat, or maybe corrosive cold, maybe, because that adds that adds more utility to it, and it helps with acolytes as well. Because it feels janky trying to force it to be the complete opposite of what it is. It is still fun, you want to play around with it, and you're only going to use it here and there, and you just want a cool, fashion piece. I can also do a little bit of AOE work. This will be good. And I also want to make clear that this is not dog trash to actually use to clear rooms, because that was Steel Path in the showcase, and it can, and it will. It's just, at some point, you will get into the situation where everybody has overguard, and they're looking away from you, right? They're looking away from you, they're focusing on your teammate, on your decoy, on whatever, and it just kind of gets really annoying to be pigeonholed into getting headshots because of pistol acuity. But it is really fun, and as of saying all of this, right now, I probably am going to see if I can make a very single target damage heavy build that will allow me to have multi-shot, so that way I can have more fun with it. It'll probably do less damage for sure, but, it'll feel a little bit better maybe. I don't know. The point is, this gun is good, and it is capable. It does have a bit of flexibility. That's all for the video, though. I hope this helped you to understand the weapon a little bit better, to have a bit more fun with it, and I hope you have a good day, a good night, and may RNG be in your favor.